I woke up to voices I wasn't meant to hear. My own son stood over me saying, "He won't remember any of this." When I look back, that was the moment everything changed. If you're watching this, tell me where you're from or what time it is. The world returned to me slowly, the way colors fade into a dark room after someone turns on a distant light. Shapes first, then sound, then the realization that I was lying in a hospital bed. The ceiling was too white. The light was too gentle. It felt staged, like a set designed to convince me everything was okay. But the voices didn't belong to a place of healing. My son's tone was not grief, not relief, not love. It was calculation. The cool and steady cadence of someone discussing a plan that no longer needed to hide. "He won't remember the fall," Claire whispered. My daughter-in-law. "The doctor said head trauma like this can erase recent events. We should just move forward with what we discussed." Move forward. A strangely polite phrase for betrayal. My eyelids were half closed. I breathed shallowly, letting my body stay limp. I had no strength to move anyway, but I had my mind. That was enough. Daniel sighed. The same sigh he had as a teenager when things didn't go his way. "We just need the paperwork to process. Once the house is transferred, everything else falls into place." My house, my life, my years of work, my memories, reduced to a matter of documents and timing. The beeping of the heart monitor seemed louder for a moment, measuring not my pulse, but the quiet breaking of something inside me. I didn't react. I didn't give them the satisfaction of knowing I was awake. Not yet. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Nurse Olivia stepped in. Her presence was gentle, but her eyes were sharp. The eyes of someone who has witnessed every version of human nature from the foot of a hospital bed. "You two should step outside for a moment," she said. "He needs rest." They left in a hurry, not out of concern, but to finish a conversation they didn't want a stranger to hear. The door swung shut. Silence settled like dust. Olivia stood still for a moment, looking at me, really looking. "I know you're awake," she said quietly. It startled me, how certain she sounded. I opened my eyes fully. No performance, no pretense, just the truth. Her expression didn't change. She had expected this. "You heard them?" she asked. I nodded, just once. She sat down, pulling the monitoring clipboard closer. She didn't touch me. She didn't speak in soothing tones. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." Nurses, real nurses, understand when sympathy is a wound, not a balm. She simply said, "You'll want this." She slid a piece of paper beneath the thin blanket. Beneath my hand, discreet, practiced, untraceable. It was a medical cognitive assessment record, the one the doctors used to determine mental function. Next to cognitive status, alert, responsive, memory intact. Signed by the attending physician that morning, not even 12 hours old, which meant Daniel and Claire were lying before they even finished checking if I survived. I studied the paper, not with shock but clarity. Each printed letter was a doorway into what came next. Not a battle of strength, but of patience and observation. "I'll check on you later," Olivia said, as though nothing meaningful had happened. "Try to rest." But I didn't sleep. Instead, I remembered. I remembered the fall. Remembered the staircase railing under my hand. I remembered the moment my foot didn't slip. It was placed wrong. A hand at my back, pressure. A push, not an accident. Though kind of memory that doesn't fade. Because it's burned into bone, hours passed. The light outside shifted. Machines hummed. A television in the hallway played something no one cared about. Time moved normally, but I did not. Something in me was rearranging. Slowly, carefully, silently. When Daniel and Claire returned, I closed my eyes again. I let them believe the lie they were building. They talked more freely now, confident. They thought memory loss had erased their crime. They thought the man in the bed was weak. But the truth was quiet, and it sat with me patiently. I had remembered everything, and silence, silence, would be my first weapon. The next chapter of my life didn't begin with anger. It began with observation. And patience has always been my strongest trait. Didn't tell anyone I remembered. Not yet, because the moment I opened my eyes and spoke, the entire story would begin to rewrite itself. So instead, I allowed the truth to replay behind my eyelids. If you're watching this, tell me what you're doing right now besides listening. It matters more than you think. The memory came back in pieces at first. Not like a movie, more like fragments of texture, sound, pressure, weight. I remembered the wooden banister under my palm, smooth from years of use. I remembered the faint citrus scent of the cleaner the housekeeper used every Friday. I remembered the quiet. Too quiet. Daniel had asked me to come downstairs to talk. His tone had been strangely measured that evening, polite in a way that didn't fit. We hadn't been close in years, not since he started treating life like a ladder and people like steps. But I went anyway, because he was my son, and fathers want to believe. The staircase in our house bends halfway down, opening into a high wall of framed photographs, smiling faces frozen in years, where love seemed effortless. Birthdays, vacations, Christmas in cabins with snow that fell too quickly to shovel. I paused there, halfway down. I remember that clearly. I always paused there. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Not hurried, not hesitant, just approaching. I turned slightly, expecting conversation. But what came instead was touch. A hand, firm, deliberate, pressed between my shoulder blades. Not a guiding touch, a force. There was no slip, no stumble, no moment where physics betrayed me. Someone pushed me, and I fell. The world didn't spin. That's the strange part. The fall was clean, direct, almost silent. The back of my head met wood, then air, then floor, and the world went white. The next thing I remembered was the hospital ceiling. I didn't tell them, because memory, when kept quiet, becomes a kind of shield. That morning, Nurse Olivia adjusted the pillows behind my back carefully. Her movements were gentle, practiced, thoughtful. She didn't ask questions she didn't need answers to. She respected silence. But doctors don't. They came in, one after another, ready to diagnose. Categorize, label. Mr. Hart, the neurologist said, we'd like to conduct a cognitive test, just to see how your memory is restoring. I nodded, though every part of me already knew the truth they were looking for. They asked my name, my birthday, the year, who the president was, the type of flooring in the hospital room, the last meal I remembered, the sound the monitor was making. I answered each one calmly, steadily. But when they asked, "Do you remember how you fell?" and I looked at their faces, the waiting, expectant concern, and I lied. "No," I said. "It's blank." The neurologist made a note. The resident nodded. The nurse didn't move at all, except her eyes flicked to mine for 1 second, sharp as glass. Later, the paper action arrived, a fall incident report. Standard, emotionless language. Patient fell from staircase in home. Cause, loss of balance. But right below that, the attending physician had added, bruise pattern on upper back, inconsistent with natural fall. Consider external force. Someone had seen the truth and recorded it. Someone else had tried to hide it. Two realities. One on paper, one in whispers. I closed my eyes and listened again to memory. Daniel's voice the night before the fall. We need to talk about the estate. Dad, it doesn't make sense for you to keep managing everything alone. Claire's voice, soft as sugar. We just want to help lighten your burden. That word, burden. People only call something a burden when they want to be rid of it. When Daniel returned to the hospital that afternoon, he sat in the chair beside me, legs crossed, hands folded, trying to look like a caring son for whoever might walk by. "How are you feeling, Dad?" he asked. I turned my head slowly, blinked twice, as though the world was still forming itself in my mind, and answered, "I'm not sure. Things feel fuzzy." His shoulders relaxed. "Good. Let him believe I was fragile. Let him think the fall had broken more than bones. Let him think memory was gone because a man who believes he's already won stops preparing for the fight. And I was just beginning. I learned very quickly that the most powerful thing I could do was appear weaker than I was. Pretending not to know is a kind of armor. And in that hospital room, I needed armor more than answers. If you're watching this, tell me what you would have done, told the truth, or stayed silent. The morning after the memory test, the doctor returned with a clipboard and a gentle smile. Doctors always try to smile in ways that reassure. Some succeed, some don't. "Michael, we're going to check your recall one more time," he said. I nodded, slow and uncertain, the way they expected a recovering patient to nod. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, striping the bed in pale, uneven bars of light. I kept my breathing steady, my gaze unfocused, just enough to seem like I was concentrating to remember. He began with simple questions. "Can you tell me today's date?" "Not exactly," I murmured. He nodded, as though he'd predicted that. "What about your address? Do you remember where you live?" This one mattered. So I paused, too long, and then answered just one number off. He wrote something down. The room air felt colder, or maybe I just became more aware of my skin touching the sheets. You become very aware of your body when you're pretending it is failing. "You're doing well," he said. The kind of encouragement that speaks more to the speaker than to the listener. But the real performance wasn't for him. It was for them. Claire entered just in time to witness my uncertainty. She carried herself with the false brightness of someone who has rehearsed sympathy in front of mirrors. "Oh, Michael," she said softly, brushing non-existent dust from my blanket. "You're trying so hard. We're all so proud of you." She spoke to me the way a person speaks to a dog recovering from surgery. I didn't respond. I stared past her, just slightly. This was the exact reaction she needed to see, because the moment she believed I was lost was the moment she relaxed. And when people relax, they reveal themselves. She leaned over me, her perfume too sweet, her voice too smooth. "We're going to take care of everything," she said. "You just focus on resting." She didn't say healing, she didn't say recovering. She said, resting. Resting is what you say to someone who has nothing left to contribute. Resting is what you say when you've already started moving the furniture. Later that afternoon, Nurse Olivia returned to conduct what she called a consistency check. It sounded clinical. It was actually a test of intent. She asked the same memory questions the doctor had asked, but this time quietly, without audience. I answered them perfectly. Not loudly, not proudly, just naturally. She didn't write anything down, she simply whispered, "Good." Then we proceed. There was no explanation, no plan outlined, no promises. But in that moment, I realized something I hadn't felt since the fall. I was not alone in this. That evening, there came a clipboard left at the foot of the bed, the daily cognitive chart. 3 columns. Orientation, short-term memory. Long-term memory, Beside each were two checkboxes, intact or impaired. The doctor had marked orientation, intact short-term memory, possible impairment, long-term memory, intact. But Claire had handwritten an additional note at the bottom. Patient frequently confused, needs support making decisions. She wasn't a doctor. She had no authority to write that. Yet there it was, her handwriting, curling at the edges like every lie she had ever told. They weren't waiting to see if I recovered. They were building a narrative in which I was incapable. A narrative in which my words held no legal weight. A narrative in which my memory didn't matter. So I played the part even better. That night, Daniel came alone. He sat beside my bed, rubbing his hands together slowly, visibly nervous. "Dad," he said, "if you need anything at all, just tell me." His voice broke on the word anything. Not from emotion, but from the strain of keeping up the performance. I looked at him, not as a father looks at a son, but as a man looks at someone he used to know. I let my lips part just slightly. My voice thin. I'm trying." He nodded quickly, relief flooding him. "Just keep resting," he said. That word again. Rest. Let them believe I was drifting. Meanwhile, I was remembering everything, clearly, painfully, fully, and memory, once awakened, is a blade. I didn't call my lawyer out of anger. Anger makes noise. Noise is easy to detect. What I needed was something quieter, something precise. If you're watching this, tell me whether you trust your family, not what you wish. The truth. The day was bright, almost cheerfully so, the kind of weather that feels almost mocking when your life has shifted into darker territory. The blinds let in narrow slits of sunlight that landed across my blanket in stripes. The room was calm. Machines hummed. A television in the background played a daytime show I wasn't watching, and somewhere down the hall, someone laughed. Life continued. Just as mine was being rearranged without me, Claire had stepped out to, as she said, make some calls. Calls, I now understood, meant planning. So I waited until the hallway grew quiet again, until the moment the nurses changed shifts and attention was elsewhere. Nurse Olivia came in to check the IV line. She didn't look at me directly. She didn't need to. I spoke softly, as if speech still took effort. "I need to call my attorney." She didn't pause. She didn't react. She simply adjusted the line, clicked a button on the monitor, and then said, "Phone's on the right side drawer. Not permission. Not alarm, just information." She knew exactly what she was doing. When the door clicked shut behind her, I reached for the drawer, slowly, because even now, I had to look like a man rediscovering his own limbs. I lifted the hospital landline receiver. The plastic felt colder than I expected, heavy in a way I hadn't noticed before. I dialed a number I could remember even if the rest of me had been wiped away. It rang twice. Andrew Miller speaking. He was my attorney of 17 years. He handled my estate planning, business sales, trusts, all of it. A steady, patient man, the kind you don't appreciate until the world tilts. His voice alone felt like something stable. "It's me," I said. A pause. Then his voice softened just slightly, still contained but aware. "You're awake?" "Yes." Another pause. Longer this time. "What do you remember?" "Enough," he exhaled. "And they don't know that." "No." The quiet between us said more than words could. He understood the stakes. I understood his caution. "Do not confront them," he said. "Not yet. You are not safe enough to do that." "I know." "We proceed quietly," he continued. "We gather evidence. We wait for the right moment." It was a conversation between strategists, not between a man and his lawyer. He asked me to verify something. Did I still have mental clarity? Could I follow a sequence of instructions? Could I recount dates, numbers, steps? I answered calmly, consistently, clearly. He didn't say it, but the test wasn't for him. It was to confirm I was capable of consent. Good, he said at last. I'll come to the hospital, but under a visitor pre-approval form so Claire can't block it. And here came the one that mattered. Olivia returned 20 minutes later with a clipboard. Hospital visitor authorization. Sign here if you want someone specific allowed. The form was simple, just a few lines, but power often hides inside simple things. I signed authorized visitor Andrew Miller, esquad date, time, room number. A legal acknowledgement that I had chosen this visit myself. Lucid, voluntary, documented. I slid the pen back across the tray and let my hand fall limp again, as though the action exhausted me. When Claire returned, I made sure to be in the exact same position as when she left, eyes half-lidded, breaths slow. How are we feeling today? She asked, brushing her fingertips across my arm as if affection lived there. Still tired, I whispered. She smiled a careful smile, the kind used to manipulate, not comfort. Just rest. I'll handle everything. There it was again. That phrase, that promise, that threat. But this time, I almost smiled. Because, while she was busy handling everything, a lawyer was being checked in at the front desk with documented access under my explicit consent. While she believed she owned the narrative, I had just begun rewriting it. She sat beside me, scrolling her phone, thinking she was winning. And I lay there, silent and still, the way a hunter waits for the right moment to breathe. The difference now was this. I was no longer the prey. I was the witness. And soon, I would be the one speaking. I've learned that truth rarely arrives in dramatic confessions. It comes in slips, in carelessness, in the moments when people believe they are unseen. If you're watching this, tell me what sound is in your room right now. A fan? A car outside? Footsteps? Anything. Ground yourself here with me. It was late afternoon when it happened. The hospital quiets in a very particular way around that time. Not silent, but settled. Machines hum steadily. Carts roll more slowly. Voices soften. It's the hour when visitors leave and patients drift, where everything feels suspended. Claire thought I was asleep. She'd just stepped away to take a call. The kind of call people make when they don't want to be overheard. But people forget that hospitals have thin walls and doors don't always close all the way. She slipped into the hallway, phone pressed against her cheek. I didn't move. I just listened. Yes. Yes, I talked to the insurance coordinator today, she said. Her voice was quiet, careful, but not careful enough. There was a pause, while someone on the other end spoke, likely the same person who had coached her in pushing through estate transfers under medical incapacity clauses. No, they don't suspect anything, she continued. The doctors think the fall caused cognitive decline. She sounded so confident, so sure the lies were working. Then, another pause, a second voice spoke. Male, firm, annoyed. Daniel is getting impatient. Tell him to be patient, she whispered sharply. These things take time. There it was, their timeline, their urgency, their pressure. She exhaled, frustrated. I am doing my part. I got the hospital to start the long-term care conversation. Once he's moved, the house transfer will be automatic. My house, the home I built brick by brick, the one with the oak staircase I oiled every spring, reduced to paperwork and impatience. Another pause, more muffled response. I could hear tension in her silence. No, he doesn't remember. He hasn't said anything. He just drifts. He's not really there. I let my breathing deepen. Slow, irregular. the way a sleeping patient breathes. She believed what she wanted to believe. She believed I was fading, which meant she felt safe, and safety makes people reckless. When the call ended, her footsteps approached. I let my eyes remain closed, my mouth slightly parted, my chest rising in soft waves, the careful choreography of helplessness. She sat beside me again, smoothing the sheet near my arm. "Rest, Michael," she murmured, "a performance for both of us." But she didn't know I had heard everything. Later that evening, Nurse Olivia returned. She adjusted the monitor leads, checked the saline line, routine movements. But her eyes flicked to the door before she spoke, making sure we were alone. "You heard something today," she said. It wasn't a question. It was acknowledgement. I opened my eyes and nodded once. "What was it?" she asked softly. I repeated Claire's words exactly. The tone, the pace, the meaning. I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize. Just truth, spoken plainly. Olivia listened with the patience of someone who has seen families eat their own. When I finished, she didn't gasp. She didn't look shocked. She simply breathed out once, slow. "I need to show you something," she said. She reached into the pocket of her scrubs and unfolded a sheet. The hospital phone log summary for the day. Calls made to the insurance office. Time stamped, recorded, archived. On the list, 2:14 p.m. Incoming call. Caller, Claire Hart. Subject, long-term care facility transfer request. She placed the paper in my hand, not just as evidence, but as foundation. "This is how you protect memory," she said quietly, not with rage, with record. Her voice held no warmth, no pity, just truth. I studied the document. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional, but it was proof. Proof is a seed, and seeds grow into forests if you give them time. When she left, the room returned to stillness. The heart monitor beeped steadily. The lights dimmed as evening settled. I lay there, not as a broken man, but as a witness gathering truth. My family thought they were building a future without me. They hadn't realized yet I was already preparing to return. And when I did, it wouldn't be with raised voices or anger. It would be with documents, with clarity, with memory sharpened like a blade. There are people who enter a room and bring noise with them. And then there are people who bring quiet, not silence, but warmth. My granddaughter, Emily, was quiet in that way. If you're watching this, tell me one person you feel safe around. Just one name. The hospital door opened with a soft click. Not the rushed swing that Daniel or Claire used when entering. Emily stepped in carefully, as though she understood that rooms like this hold delicate things. Breath, memory, endings. She was only 8, yet she moved with the caution of someone who had already learned to observe the world before speaking to it. She clutched a folded piece of paper in one hand and a stuffed rabbit in the other. The rabbit was worn, patched in 2 places. I had mended it once, years ago, when she cried because its ear tore during a move. I could still remember threading the needle while she watched with wide eyes, believing I could fix anything. Now she looked smaller, quieter, older, somehow. She climbed carefully onto the chair beside my bed, feet dangling above the floor, and placed the drawing gently on my lap. "It's us," she said. Her voice was soft, but steady. I looked at the paper. The drawing showed 2 figures sitting on a garden bench. My garden bench, the one under the elm tree, where I used to read while she collected fallen leaves and pretended they were treasure. In the drawing, our hands were touching. "You remember that?" I asked. She nodded. "I like when it's quiet there," I smiled. A real smile, not the performance I'd been giving the adults. For a moment, There was no hospital, no betrayal, no fall, just a child who still believed in simple things. She leaned closer, pressing her cheek against my arm, and in the small, unguarded way children share truth, she whispered, "Mom said you won't wake up again." The sentence was spoken casually, as though recounting the weather, but it landed like a stone in my chest. I didn't move. I didn't react. I let silence hold the space. She kept talking, her voice warm and unburdened by the weight of what she was revealing. "Dad said you were tired, that you were going away soon, going away." The language of erasure, the language of inheritance, the language of endings scripted before reality has finished writing itself. I took her hand gently. "Do I look like I'm going away?" She stared at me, studying my face the way children do when they're trying to separate truth from comfort. "No," she said at last. "You look here, that was all. Not strong, not safe, not healed. Here. And sometimes, being here is enough." She stayed with me for the next hour. We talked about her school art project, about the neighbor's new dog, about how she was learning to whistle but could only make air sounds. I listened more than I spoke. Presence was the gift, not words. Then came the small, quiet, powerful. She unfolded a second drawing from her pocket. This one was just a heart. Inside, she had written, "Remember me." Children don't write metaphors. They write truth. I tucked the drawing beneath the edge of my pillow. Not hidden, but held. When Claire returned, her expression tightened the moment she saw Emily holding my hand. A flicker of something, annoyance, fear, crossed her face. But she masked it quickly, her smile stiff and bright. "Sweetheart, time to go," she chirped, too loudly. Emily looked at me once more. A long, searching look. And I knew she saw more than they thought she was capable of seeing. She hugged me tightly, whispered, "I'll visit again." And then she was gone. The room felt different after she left. Not lighter, but sharper. Because now I remembered something I had nearly forgotten. I was not fighting to save myself. I was fighting to protect what she still believed family could be. As the door closed behind them, Nurse Olivia slipped in quietly, checking the vitals with her usual unhurried patience. "She loves you," Olivia said, "not as comfort, but as fact." I nodded, and something settled in me then. Not anger, not despair. Purpose. Quiet. Deliberate, unwavering. I would remember. Would endure. I would stand again. Not for revenge, but for the child who still drew hearts and garden benches. The next step wouldn't be emotional. It would be strategic. I didn't sleep that night, not because of pain, though there was plenty of that. Not because of fear, though it lingered like a shadow in the corner of the room. I stayed awake because I had begun to understand the game, and I needed to remember every rule. If you're watching this, tell me one thing you've learned the hard way. Just one lesson. The next morning, sunlight slanted through the blinds, warmer this time, like the world outside had no awareness that anything was wrong. Claire arrived early, her heels clicking too sharply against the tile, a rhythm of impatience. Daniel followed minutes later, avoiding eye contact, his jaw tight, his shirt collar stiff like he had dressed for war instead of visiting a recovering father. They believed the story they'd built, that I was a fading memory, not a witness. They spoke around me, not to me, discussed plans for when he transitions, as though I were already gone. Their voices blurred into a hollow echo while I drifted somewhere between presence and observation. But my mind was not drifting. My mind was sorting, aligning, recalling, years ago, long before any illness, Long before any tension, I had rewritten my will. Not because of mistrust, but because life changes. Children grow. Values shift. I had left most of my estate to Daniel, yes. But a portion was reserved for scholarship funds, community architecture projects, and, quietly, a trust for Emily's future. No one knew about that trust, not even Daniel, certainly, not Claire. And that made it important, because betrayal is always about believing you already understand the ending. They didn't. They only knew about the old will, the one they had built, their plans around, the one they assumed would stay, untouched. They forgot something about me. I have always kept one drawer they didn't know existed. That evening, when visiting hours ended and the hospital quieted into its soft mechanical lull, I asked Nurse Olivia for my personal belongings bag, the one they stored when I was admitted. It held my wallet, watch, keys, and a few folded papers that I carried everywhere, though most would call them sentimental clutter. Among them was the envelope, cream-colored, unmarked, sealed. It had been in my desk drawer at home for years, replaced every time I updated its contents. A copy of the will. The real one. The one that mattered. My hands trembled. Not from weakness, but from the weight of it. The weight of knowledge. Inside, it read, Primary Beneficiary, Daniel Hart, 45%. Secondary Beneficiary, Community Urban Arts, Scholarship, 35% Trust Beneficiary, Emily Hart, 20%. Held until age 18, I hadn't favored Daniel. I hadn't punished him. I'd simply balanced legacy with purpose and love. A rational decision made long before betrayal. But now rationality had become ammunition. Olivia stood nearby, watching quietly as I unfolded the document. "You'll need to update it," she said. She didn't ask why. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't say their names. She already knew. "I will," I said. She nodded once. "Then we need your lawyer. Soon." He arrived again, silent but profound. Olivia wrote a note on the patient visitation log, granting professional consultation access. It looked like hospital procedure. It was actually a doorway. Later, Daniel returned alone. Maybe Claire was tired. Maybe they had argued. Maybe the facade was already cracking. He sat beside me, but not close. "Dad," he began, voice thick, rehearsed. "I know things have been hard. We just want what's best for you. Best for me." Always such benevolent words, used to disguise extraction. I let my eyes flutter open slowly. The performance still necessary. "I trust you," I whispered. His relief was instant, visible, unguarded. He believed me. Good. Let him believe. Let him think loyalty still lived here. Because betrayal is only effective if the betrayed remains unaware. But I was aware now, completely, and awareness, when coupled with patience, becomes strategy. He left the room believing he had won, and as the door closed behind him, I held the will in my lap like a quiet promise. Not revenge. Correction. Balance restored. In the morning, my lawyer would come, and the rewriting would begin. Nurses are the quiet historians of hospitals. Doctors diagnose. Families react. But nurses witness. They see what people do when they believe no one is watching. If you're watching this, tell me whether you pay attention to small details, yes or no. The day my lawyer visited was the day everything shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the subtle gravity of something finally clicking into place. It started with routine things. The scraping of metal bed rails, the measured beep of the heart monitor, sunlight spreading lazily across the tiled floor. The kind of morning hospitals create to disguise how many lives are being held there by threads. I heard the door slide open before I saw who entered. I recognized the sound of her steps. Slow, steady, deliberate. Nurse Olivia moved the way a person moves when they have seen too much to be hurried by anything. She checked the chart on the wall, then set it down. Her voice was quiet, the kind meant to be heard only by the one meant to hear it. He's here. No name needed, just he. And I knew. Andrew Miller, my lawyer, would not approach the room like family. He would not hesitate. He would knock only once, with purpose. The knock came exactly 3 seconds later. Olivia opened the door for him, something nurses almost never do for non-medical staff. But this wasn't standard procedure. This was coordination. Andrew entered wearing a charcoal suit that seemed to absorb the low hospital light rather than reflect it. He didn't greet me with sentiment. No handshake, no sympathetic tilt of the head. Just presence, grounded, steady. "Michael," he said simply. My performance continued. Slow turn of the head, delayed recognition, softened gaze. "Andrew," I murmured. He knew the role I had to play. He didn't break it. "We'll review some paperwork. Together," he said, loud enough for anyone passing by to consider it. Routine. He placed a slim file folder on the side table, but his eyes flicked to Olivia. She didn't speak. She simply reached for the privacy curtain and pulled it around the bed, enclosing us in a soft cotton barrier that absorbed sound just enough. Then she stepped. Outside, not to leave, to guard. Andrew sat. "You're certain?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said. There was no tremor in my voice this time. He opened the folder. Inside were 2 documents, a revocation of existing power of attorney, a draft revision of my will, but the will was only half of what mattered. "Their behavior indicates urgency," Andrew said. "They're trying to move assets quickly. That means they're confident, and confidence makes people sloppy." I nodded. I had already seen the sloppiness. In whispers, signatures, insurance calls. He slid a pen toward me, but this wasn't the yet. Not until Olivia returned. She stepped back into the room, placed her clipboard neatly at the foot of the bed, and said in a tone that could easily be mistaken for medical instruction, "I'll need to witness this signature for patient capacity verification." Those were the legal words, the ones that meant, "This signature will hold in court." They cannot claim I was confused. I was of sound mind. I signed my name slowly, carefully, not shaking, not uncertain. Michael Hart. The handwriting matched every signature I had ever given. A perfect mirror of the memory they believed I'd lost. Olivia initialed beside it. Andrew added, his time and date stamped. The paperwork was placed in a blank manila envelope. Not labeled, not marked, not traceable. Olivia slipped it into her scrubs pocket, over her heart. She wasn't just a witness. She was now part of the story. Before Andrew left, he said something that wasn't strategy or procedure. Something human. "You don't have to forgive them," he said. "But you do have to stay patient." I nodded. Patience was no longer difficult. Patience was purpose. When he left, Olivia lingered a moment. "You should know," she said quietly. "Families like this often believe the outcome is inevitable." She looked at me. "Not out of pity, out of recognition." "But inevitability changes," she continued. "Once someone decides to stay, stay. Not survive, not endure. Stay." When she walked away, I understood something I hadn't yet realized. Was not regaining my life. I was reclaiming it. Piece by piece. Signature by signature. Memory by memory. And soon, step by step. Because next came my body, and they still believed I couldn't stand. They were about to learn otherwise. Healing is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is a quiet returning. to strength, to memory, to self. If you're watching this, tell me whether you believe people can change. Yes or no? 2 days after signing the revocation, I was scheduled for a cognitive therapy evaluation, the kind meant to determine whether I was capable of independent decision-making, the kind my family was counting on me to fail. The therapist arrived in late morning. She was not what I expected. Her name was Dr. Adrienne Hale, and she carried no clipboard, only a small notebook and an expression that did not assume anything about me. Her hair was tied back loosely, strands escaping in quiet rebellion. She sat down, not beside me, but across from me, not towering, not looming, simply present. "Good morning, Michael," she said. "Not Mr. Hart, not sir. Just Michael." I nodded. "We're going to take our time today," she continued. "No pressure. I'm not here to test you. I'm here to understand you." A pretty phrase, but I recognized careful neutrality when I saw it. She began with memory recall. Dates, names, recent events. I answered each slowly, moderately, deliberately imperfect. I needed to be remembered as recovering, not recovered. If I was too sharp, Claire would panic. If I was too dull, my voice would lose legal power. So I walked the invisible line between both. At one point, Dr. Hale asked, "Do you remember the day of your injury?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I let my gaze drift, not dramatically, not suspiciously, just far enough to suggest fog. "I remember. The stairs," I murmured. "Then falling. Not a lie. Just not the entire truth." She watched my face, not my words. "I see," she said softly. "Do you feel safe at home?" My chest tightened, not from fear, but from the weight of the question. I didn't answer right away. Silence is information. Finally, I whispered, "I don't know." Truth, strategically incomplete. Dr. Hale wrote one single note in her small notebook. Just one, then closed it gently. She shifted the conversation. "Let's try something else. Repeat after me. The garden grows where light is allowed." I repeated it, one word at a time, slow, thoughtful. She nodded. "Now tell me what it means." I smiled. Just barely. "It means things become what we encourage them to become." Her eyes softened. Recognition. Understanding. She knew I understood far more than I showed. The came quietly. No ceremony. No announcement. She stood, walked to the side table, and filled out the assessment form. Her handwriting was small, precise, confident, cognitive function, intact judgment, sound memory, stable and accurate. Notes. Patient demonstrates intentional response modulation. Appears to be self-regulating for emotional reasons, not cognitive impairment. She signed it, then placed the form in the outgoing medical folder, not Claire's hands, not Daniel's, not accessible for family review. Straight into the system. That meant legally documented competence. That meant their plan was now on borrowed time. Dr. Hale turned back to me. "You're protecting something," she said quietly. "Something important." I didn't deny it. She didn't ask what. We both respected the boundary. But just then, the door opened. Daniel walked in, carrying 2 coffees and a forced smile. He didn't see the signed evaluation form. He didn't know what had just changed. He placed a cup on the side table. "I thought you might like one," he said to me. I looked at him. Really? Looked. He was nervous. Not guilty yet. Just afraid of being discovered. Interesting. Dr. Hale smiled politely. "Thank you." "We just finished." Daniel's eyes flicked to me. "How did it go?" I let my gaze soften. Trying my best, I said gently. His shoulders loosened. He exhaled. Good, he whispered. That's good. To him, I was still fog, still weak, still manageable. But he didn't see the therapist slipped the evaluation form into the medical file tray behind him. He didn't see Nurse Olivia collect it minutes later. He tiny keys, didn't see the foundation of his plan quietly dissolve. He sipped his coffee, believing he had time, believing the ending was already written. He didn't know. I had just regained my voice. Not loud, not angry, not triumphant, just undeniable. Next, I would regain my body. Some betrayals are whispered. Some arrive on paper. And some arrive pushing a hospital bed down a hallway. If you're watching this, tell me whether you listen more than you speak. Yes or no. The day they tried to move me began like any other, a quiet morning, thin sunlight resting across my blanket, soft footsteps in the hallway, the distant sound of someone laughing at a joke I would never know. The world never pauses for the moment your life shifts. It just keeps going. Olivia had been off shift, a detail that mattered more than I realized at the time. Two orderlies entered the room, wearing the kind of polite neutrality that hospitals teach. Not rude, not warm, just functional. Mr. Hart, one of them said, we're here to transport you to your long-term care. Sweet, long-term care. The phrase sat heavily in the air, a place where people go to fade quietly. Place where decisions are made for you. Place where voices stop being heard. I didn't move immediately. I let silence bloom. Silence forces others to reveal intent. I wasn't told about a transfer. I said finally, voice soft, steady. It was approved by your family, the taller orderly replied. Family, a word that can mean protection or threat, depending on who speaks it. May I see the doctor's authorization? I asked. They froze, just for half a second. But half a second is enough to see truth. We were told it was urgent, the other answered. Urgent is the word used when someone doesn't want. Paperwork examined, they moved closer, adjusting the bed rails. That's when she walked in. Claire. Her smile was too bright, her tone too light. There you are. This is just temporary, dear. A quieter place, more restful. You'll be so much more comfortable. Comfortable? The way one comforts a pet before giving it away. I looked at her, letting my eyes soften, letting her believe her narrative was working. Did the doctor approve this? I asked. She blinked, just once, a small fracture in her performance. It's a routine transfer, Michael, she said. No need to complicate things. Complicate. Meaning, question, resist, exist. The orderlies began unlocking the wheels. But fate, or truth, has curious timing. The door opened again, and Olivia stepped in. Her posture was calm, but her eyes were sharp, assessing, measuring, understanding. Where are you taking him? She asked. The taller orderly replied, we have a request for long-term care transfer. Olivia didn't look at him. She looked at Claire. Is that so? Claire lifted her chin. Yes, it's for his well-being. Olivia stepped closer, her voice still level. I'll need the attending physician's signed authorization and the neurologist's cognitive clearance before any transfer can occur. The room tightened. Claire's smile faltered. Well, I'm sure it's in his file. No, Olivia said softly. I checked this morning. She held up a form. Crisp. Official. Irrefutable. Cognitive status. Intact transfer. Approval. Denied signed by Dr. Hale. Claire's face changed. A flicker of something raw and exposed. The orderlies backed away from the bed immediately. Apologies, ma'am, the tall one said. We can't proceed without confirmed authorization. They left. The room settled. Claire stayed. Her expression was no longer rehearsed. She leaned in close to me, voice barely above breath. "Why can't you just forget?" Not said in frustration, said in disappointment, as if memory itself was a betrayal. She left without waiting for an answer. The room felt wider when she was gone. I looked at Olivia. "You saved me," I said. "No," she replied. "You saved yourself. I just made sure the record reflected the truth." And there it was. The not dramatic, not emotional, just ink that stopped a life from being erased. Olivia replaced the chart on the wall, her movements precise. "They will try again," she said. I nodded. "I know." She paused, then added quietly, "You're stronger than they think. Don't show it yet. Not yet. Strength is most powerful when revealed at the right time, not before." As she left the room, I looked at the ceiling, at the pale light, at the thin blanket covering me. They thought they were pushing me out of my life, but I was preparing to walk back into it on my own feet. And that began the next step. When people feel they are winning, they stop watching their hands. They speak too freely. They move too quickly. They forget the possibility of resistance. If you're watching this, tell me the last time you stayed silent, even though you knew the truth. After the failed transfer attempt, the room held a different kind of silence. Not helplessness, preparation. I sat against the raised bed, the afternoon sunlight cutting across my blanket in long golden bands. Outside, I could hear a cart roll past and someone softly humming. The world moved, unaware that mine had just shifted another inch back into place. I waited until evening, not because I couldn't act sooner, but because timing matters. Night softens everything. Footsteps, conversations, suspicion. Nurse Olivia stepped in during shift change, her expression unchanged except for one flicker of awareness in her eyes. She didn't need to ask if I was ready. She simply moved to the bedside table and adjusted the items just enough to shield the phone from hallway view. No, words were exchanged. I picked up the receiver, not dramatically, just like someone calling home. I dialed Andrew's number from memory. "It rang once, Michael?" he answered. "Yes," I said. My voice was steady. His silence was not confusion. It was focus. He was listening the way one listens to a man stepping back into his own story. "They attempted to move me today. No physician authorization. Claire arranged it." "I see," he said. Paper rustled on his end. That was how I knew he had already begun documenting. "They believe I'm compliant. They think I'm weak." "Good," he said. "Calm. No surprise. No pity, just strategy. Continue letting them think that." I closed my eyes and let the next words fall with precision. "I'm ready to change the will. Not revenge, not emotion, just decision." Andrew exhaled quietly. Not relief, not approval, but acknowledgement of gravity. "I'll prepare the documents," he said. "We'll keep everything sealed until the day it needs to be revealed. Make Emily the primary beneficiary." The sentence felt like releasing a held breath, not joy, not sadness, but clarity. "Understood," he replied. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. Children see love more purely than adults, and I wanted to protect the one who still believed family was something soft and warm, not sharp and dangerous. "Do you still have the envelope?" I asked. "Yes, secured." That meant the will was already protected. Safe. Untouchable. But we weren't finished. "We'll also revoke all financial decision rights granted under emergency care conditions," he continued. "Daniel won't be able to withdraw another cent." There was a long, full silence. Not between us, but within me, because that was the exact moment I realized something. Was not powerless. I was simply quiet. And quiet things are often mistaken for weak things. But quiet is strategy. Before we ended the call, Andrew said one final thing, a sentence that would carry me through every step that followed. Do not confront them. Let them reveal themselves. I hung up, and that's when the calm Olivia stepped inside and placed the hospital visitor confirmation slip on the tray table. Proof of my voluntary, competent communication with my lawyer. Signed, time-stamped, filed, a legal trail, small, precise, unbreakable. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She left the room as quietly as she entered. Not long after, Daniel came in. His hair was slightly unkempt, his eyes tired. He sat down, unsmiling. "Dad," he said softly, "we're doing everything we can. We just don't want to lose you." And for the first time, I didn't hear manipulation. I heard fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of losing money. Fear of losing the version of me who didn't question him. I looked at him with a softness that felt almost too honest. "You won't," I said. He nodded, reassured. Misunderstanding completely. He thought I meant him. I meant myself. He thought I meant his version of me. I meant the real me, and the real me had just taken the first step home. The next move would not be words. It would be proof. Money is louder than truth. It leaves fingerprints, even when hands are gloved. And if you follow those prints long enough, they lead straight to the heart of a lie. If you're watching this, tell me if you've ever caught someone in a lie without confronting them. Just yes or no. 2 days after the phone call with Andrew, the air in my room felt heavier, as if something unseen was watching back. Claire had stopped smiling during her visits. Daniel had started over-explaining everything. Guilt doesn't always confess. Sometimes it over-communicates. That morning, I waited until Olivia came in for rounds. She checked my vitals, updated my chart, and turned to leave. I spoke softly, just enough to stop her hand on the doorknob. "I need access to my bank records." She didn't turn around immediately. She let the words settle, assessing risk, intent, consequence. Then, still facing the door, she asked, "Personal or joint?" "Personal," I said. "Accounts ending in 3172 and 5064. She nodded once. No surprise, no curiosity. "I'll submit the patient rights request form." "You'll have to sign." That was the beauty of hospitals. Under their own rules, every patient, competent or not, has the right to request records pertaining to their own care or finances, especially if listed under medical payment authorization. It was the smallest legal crack in their carefully built wall. 2 hours later, the form arrived. I signed it with deliberate calm, my handwriting even, my initials clear. Olivia faxed it through the hospital's machine herself. I heard the soft whir of the paper feed and the electronic tone that meant it had been sent. The next morning, the envelope came back. It was thin, no more than a few pages, but it was weightier than any hospital tray or IV bag in that room. She slipped it into my lap when no one else was there. Inside were 2 recent monthly statements from my personal account. The first page was unremarkable. Utilities, a donation, a few transfers I'd made months before. But the second page, 2 large withdrawals, both dated after the fall. Both authorized under power of attorney, Daniel Hart. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. Not because I couldn't process them, but because memory started replaying, crisp and merciless. I remembered the form I'd signed before surgery. Not granting power of attorney, but temporary medical authorization. It was supposed to last 72 hours. After that, control should have reverted to me. It hadn't, because someone had replaced that form. Olivia stepped close, lowering her voice. "You need to see this," She placed another sheet beside it. A copy of the power of attorney document the bank had on file. My signature, except it wasn't. The strokes were off. The tail of the H was too long. The date written in a different ink tone. Forged. I traced the signature lightly with one finger. Not disbelief, not shock, just confirmation. They were waiting for me to forget, I said. Olivia nodded. And you didn't. She slid a small notepad toward me. Hospital stationery, the kind used for medication notes. Write this down, she said. Dates, amounts, account details. And sign the bottom. It'll be your written acknowledgement of discovery. A written acknowledgement. Proof that I had found the fraud while still in sound mind. We documented everything. Slowly. Precisely. No extra words. Just facts. I signed the bottom. Michael Hart. 2:37 p.m. When the notepad was done, Olivia tore out the page and folded it into a separate envelope. I'll scan this to your lawyer, she said. And with that, the trail was no longer silent. That evening, Daniel came again. He stood by the window, his reflection distorted in the glass. Dad, he said, voice too calm, the hospital bills are stacking up. Don't worry, I'm taking care of them. Taking care. A perfect phrase. Vague, benevolent, poisonous. I didn't respond. I let him keep talking. He wanted reassurance. I wanted information. I might move some funds around, he continued. Just to balance things. I nodded. Slow, tired, compliant. The kind of nod that lets the guilty keep talking. When he left, I reached for the small folder under my blanket. The statements, the forged document, the notepad copy, proof. Cold, factual, undeniable. The kind of truth that doesn't raise its voice, it just waits. And when it's ready, it ends things quietly. The next chapter wasn't about documents, it was about motion. Because if I wanted to reclaim my life, I'd need to walk out of that bed myself. Strength does not return all at once. It comes back in small, stubborn moments, the kind most people overlook. If you're watching this, tell me one thing you've had to rebuild in your life. Anything. Trust, confidence, health, patience. The morning routine was always the same. Vitals, medication, charting, the soft shuffle of nurses changing shifts. But I woke that day with a different kind of stillness inside me. Not weakness. Determination. The hospital bed has a way of convincing you that you belong to it, that your bones are heavy, that your body is fragile, that you should stay where you are. I had been lying in that bed for days, playing the role they needed to believe. But now, I needed to remember the man I had been before the staircase, before the whispers, before the signatures. When the physical therapist entered, she introduced herself with a practical calm. I'm Dr. Reyes. We'll start small today. She was one of those people who didn't praise you for trying, only for doing. I appreciated that. I didn't need comfort. I needed traction. She helped raise the bed. The motion pulled at my ribs and spine. But pain is information, not an obstacle. Let's begin with sitting at the edge, she said. The simple act of shifting my legs over the side felt like lifting stone. But I didn't rush. Slow movement is controlled movement, and controlled movement is strength. The floor was cold under my bare feet, shockingly real. I hadn't felt anything so concrete since the fall. Good, she said, not warm, not congratulating. Witnessing. We tried standing next. My fingers tightened around her forearm, not for support, but for balance. My legs trembled, but they held. For a moment, the room tilted. Walls swayed like slow waves. But I stayed upright. Again, I said. We did it 5 times, then 6, then 7. I didn't stumble. I didn't collapse. I remembered. This was not a new skill. This was something my body already knew. I was simply recalling it, the way memory returns to the hand that once wrote letters after years of silence. When we finished, she made a note in my file. Not dramatic, not emotional, just factual. Ambulation progress. Standing unaided for 14 seconds. Motor coordination improving, a small line of text. But to me, it felt like the first brick in the foundation of my return later that afternoon, when the halls were quieter and the sun had dipped low enough to paint the room amber. I tried again. Alone. I moved the blanket aside, shifted my legs over the edge, sat still until the dizziness passed, placed my feet on the floor, and stood. No applause. No audience. Just me, against gravity, against doubt, against what they believed I was. I walked. Not far. Just to the window. But it was enough. From there, I could see the parking lot, rows of cars, people moving to and from their lives, unaware that mine was assembling itself back together, piece by piece. When I turned back, Daniel was standing in the doorway. He froze, not in shock, but in comprehension. He saw strength, and strength was the one thing he hadn't planned for. "Dad," he said, his voice thin, "you shouldn't be doing that. You could hurt yourself." Concern. No. Control disguised as concern. I sank back into the bed slowly. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted him to believe I did. "I just wanted to see outside," I said. He nodded. "Too quickly. Of course. Just be careful." His eyes didn't leave my hands. He was checking, watching, measuring. He didn't speak again before he left. But the silence he carried out of the room told me everything. He no longer trusted the narrative he had built, and doubt is the first crack in any plan. That night, I didn't sleep, not out of fear, but anticipation. If I was strong enough to stand, I was strong enough to return home. And to return home, I needed power. Legal power. Financial power. The power of choice, which meant one thing. It was time to rewrite the will. Quietly. Decisively. Perfectly. Some moments change a life loudly. This one changed mine in absolute silence. If you're watching this, tell me one thing you would protect at any cost. A person, a memory, a principle. The day my lawyer returned, the hospital felt unusually still, the kind of stillness that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Not fear, anticipation. A story moving toward a hinge point. Andrew didn't come in through the main visitor entrance this time. He came at the hour between shifts, when the halls are neither supervised nor abandoned. The hospital has rhythms, like tides, and Olivia had timed his entry to drift in the quiet between them. She entered first, as always, with the efficient grace of someone who has carried more secrets than most families ever will. "He's here," she said softly. Not whispered. Whispers attract curiosity. Just said. The door opened again, and there he was, Andrew Miller, quiet, steady, unhurried. He didn't carry a briefcase this time. That would have looked like business. Instead, he carried a plain, thin manila folder, inconspicuous enough to pass for routine discharge papers. He sat beside my bed, same as before. No greeting, no sympathy, no reassurance, just presence. He placed the folder on my lap and opened it slowly, carefully, as though unveiling something sacred. "The new draft," he said, voice barely above silence. Inside were 3 documents. Revocation of prior will. 2. Last will and testament. Revised. 3. Beneficiary trust for Emily Hartnell. Drama, no rhetoric. Just law. Clean and sharp. I read every line. Not because I needed to. I remembered the conversation. But because memory is power, and I wanted to see every word printed on paper, the way truth prints itself into the mind. Emily's name appeared, where Daniel once assumed his authority would live, unquestioned, not as an afterthought, not as sympathy, but as legacy. She would inherit what I built, the house, the portfolio, the land parcel by the river I planned to turn into a community garden someday. Not because she earned it, because she still believed in what family is supposed to mean. Daniel and Claire were not cut out entirely. I hadn't written this story with vengeance. That's not who I am. They were given a single line. A courtesy inheritance of remembrance. Not entitlement. Not nothing. Just not everything. Balance. Truth. Consequence. But none of this mattered unless the will was signed. Documented while I was clearly, undeniably, intentionally aware. Which meant we needed a witness. Right on cue, Olivia stepped forward. She didn't say a word. She simply picked up the pen and set it gently in my open hand. Warm. Solid. Present. I signed my name. Michael Hart. The strokes were slow, but steady, unshaken. Andrew signed beneath it. Olivia signed beside. It, 3 names, 3 anchors in the truth, the was, complete. But that wasn't the end. Olivia did something subtle, but genius. She placed the original will document into a standard hospital discharge envelope, indistinguishable among hundreds used daily. Then, she slipped it into the outgoing medical records courier bag, which would be sealed and transported off-site within the hour. That meant Claire couldn't intercept it. Daniel couldn't misplace it. No one could modify it. It was gone. Safe. Before anyone knew it existed. Andrew stood. "You don't owe them an explanation," he said. "No," I replied, "but I will give them the truth." He paused, then nodded. He left without ceremony. Olivia lingered for a breath. "You did the hardest part," she said. "No," I answered. "The hardest part is still ahead." She didn't argue. She left the room quietly. The door shut with the softest click, the kind that feels final even when nothing dramatic is happening. And in that silence, I realized this was the moment I reclaimed my life. Not when I remembered the fall, not when I stood, not when I caught the forged signature, but here, with ink and intention. The end of Act 2 had arrived. I was no longer pretending, I was preparing to return home. I didn't leave the hospital healed, I left. Aware. If you're watching this, tell me how the weather is outside your window right now. It matters. Presence matters. The morning of my release was gentle in a way that felt almost false. The sunlight came in soft, hazy, as though the world had agreed to pretend nothing had happened here. A nurse I didn't know, not Olivia, came to remove my IV and check my vitals one last time. "Looks good," she said. "Discharge should be in an hour." Discharge. Clean word for something far more complicated. Because I wasn't simply leaving a building. I was returning to a battlefield. Disguised as a home, Daniel and Claire arrived early, not out of eagerness to see me, but because control is easier when you are the one holding the car keys. They stood side by side in the doorway, silhouettes against the hallway light. "You ready to come home, Dad?" Daniel asked. His tone was practiced, the concerned son performance that had begun to crack in the days before. I nodded slowly, pushing myself upright. My legs trembled, but not from weakness, from the effort of controlling how much strength to reveal. Too strong, and they panic. Too weak, and they push again. Balance, quiet power. Claire stepped forward as though rehearsing compassion. "I made sure everything is set up for you," she said brightly. "We've moved things around to make it easier. We rearranged your life while you were gone." I let my expression remain soft, grateful. The role still mattered. Then Olivia entered. No announcement, no hesitation. She carried one sheet of paper, the hospital discharge summary, stamped, signed, dated. The kind of document that leaves no room for questions. She handed it to me, not to them. "Mr. Hart," she said, her tone warm enough to be genuine and steady enough to be professional. "You are being discharged home under standard independent recovery. No long-term care assignment. Required." Claire's posture faltered. The smallest flicker, and Neil's jaw tightened. That single sentence destroyed every narrative. They had tried to build. "I'll walk him out," Olivia added. There was no objection they could make without revealing motive. I stood. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just steadily. My feet touched the floor. My weight settled. And I walked, slowly, deliberately, beside Olivia, not leaning, not clinging. Strength demonstrated in silence is strength no one can deny. The hallway stretched long and bright. Nurses I didn't know nodded politely, but their eyes held understanding. Stories move in hospitals, not through talking, but through observation. When we reached the elevator, Olivia pressed the button and waited beside me. No farewell speeches, no dramatic advice, just presence. When the doors slid open, she finally spoke. Not softly this time, but clearly. "You remember everything. Don't let them convince you otherwise." Her eyes held mine, steady, unwavering. I nodded. "Thank you." She didn't say, "You're welcome." She didn't need to. We understood each other. Too quiet. Witnesses in the same chapter of truth. The elevator doors closed. The ride down felt long, not in time, but in gravity. Leaving a place of safety always does. The lobby was crowded, voices overlapping in a blur. Wheelchairs rolling, nurses calling names, people waiting for news they were trying to brace for. But the glass doors to the outside were open, and sunlight spilled in like something warm, real, unfiltered. The world did not look different, but I was. Daniel parked close. He opened the passenger door as though performing kindness for an audience, sat, slowly, carefully. The seatbelt clicked. "Dan Satu," doctor shut, and just like that, the hospital was behind me. As we pulled out of the lot, Claire glanced back at me through the rear-view mirror, her reflection small and sharp. "We're so glad you're coming home," she said. I met her gaze in the mirror. "I am too," I said. But I didn't mean the same home she meant. They were returning to the house where they believed I was powerless. I was returning to the house where I kept every record, every memory, every lesson, and every truth that would unravel everything they'd tried to build. The car turned onto the main road. The city passed by like a memory I wasn't finished with yet, and I closed my eyes, not to rest, but to remember, because the next chapter would not be quiet observation, it would be return. Coming. Home should have felt like healing. Instead, it felt like stepping into a museum of my own absence. If you're watching this, tell me the first smell you notice when you walk into your home. Mine used to be cedar and coffee. Daniel unlocked the front door as if the house were his. Claire followed close behind, jangling her keys too loudly. I paused on the threshold, one hand resting on the doorframe. The hallway smelled different. Lavender air freshener instead of wood polish, the faint trace of something chemical. Not comforting. They had redecorated. Not completely. Just enough that nothing felt familiar. The family portraits that once lined the stairs were gone, replaced by abstract art that meant nothing. My books had been rearranged, their spines facing backward like soldiers ordered to hide their titles. Even the piano in the living room was covered, as though silence were safer. Claire smiled thinly. We thought a little change might make it easier for you to adjust. Adjust, as though my life were a piece of furniture they'd moved. I nodded, slow, deliberate. It's nice. The performance mattered still. Let them think gratitude meant surrender. Daniel guided me toward the study, but the door was locked. My study, my space for 40 years. Where's my key? I asked. Oh, we just, moved some files, he said too quickly. Didn't want you to trip over anything. Of course, Claire added. We'll open it later. Later. Always later. I sat in my armchair, the one piece of furniture they hadn't touched. The cushion remembered me even if they didn't. Dust motes drifted through the light, lazy and unhurried. Claire disappeared into the kitchen. Daniel hovered, restless, pretending to check his phone. That's when I noticed it. A faint hum, too low to be electronics. The sound came from behind the wall near the old phone jack. Someone had installed a small digital recorder. Not professional, but effective. They were recording me. I smiled. Let them, because truth doesn't fear documentation. Lies do. When they finally left me alone, I went to work. The first drawer of the side table was empty, but the second still held what I had hidden there years ago. A tiny cassette recorder from my teaching days, the one I'd used to practice lectures. Old, but functional. I pressed record, not to catch their voices, but mine. Evidence that I was coherent, rational, articulate, proof of awareness in my own home. I wrote the date and time on a small notepad beside it. Home recording begins. Michael Hart. Cognitive status. Intact. The hum of the recorder continued in the wall. 2 stories running side by side. That night, they argued downstairs. Their voices were muffled through the vent, but words drifted upward like dust. Claire. We can't wait much longer. He's stronger than we thought, Daniel. Give it time. He'll trust us again. Claire. He doesn't trust you, Daniel. He's watching, Daniel. Then we move faster. I didn't need to hear more. They were planning a sale, maybe the house, maybe the investments. What they didn't know, my lawyer already had control locked behind signatures they couldn't access. I rose from the chair, each step measured, deliberate, my body still stiff but steady. I walked to the hallway, paused at the family photos they'd moved into storage. I took one frame, me holding Emily at the beach when she was 3, and placed it on the mantel. A restoration of memory. A quiet declaration of ownership. The next morning, Claire appeared at my door with coffee. Too sweet, as always. You slept well? She asked. Better than I expected, I said. The house feels different. She tilted her head. Change can be good. Sometimes, I replied, but not always. She didn't understand the weight in that sentence. Not yet. When she left, I clicked the cassette player off and slid it into my pocket. The tape whirred to a stop, a small, satisfying sound. I looked around the room. This was no longer their stage. It was my archive. Because the next move wasn't theirs to make. It was mine, and it would start with an invitation. Ito, dinner, all of us. One table. One truth. Some confrontations are loud. Some are violent. The most devastating ones happen at a dinner. table. If you're watching this, tell me the last meal you remember sharing with someone who later hurt you. Just the food, not the memory. I woke the next morning with purpose. Not anger, purpose. Anger clouds judgment. Purpose sharpens it. The house was quiet. Early light stretching across the hardwood floors like thin gold thread. I could hear Claire in the kitchen, speaking softly into her phone, performing tenderness for whoever was on the other side. "We're taking good care of him," she said, voice dipped in sugar. Her tone was for the world. The truth was for the walls. I walked into the kitchen slowly, one hand grazing the counter, not because I needed it, but because I needed them to think I needed it. She turned, startled, then put on her warm smile like a jacket. "Good morning. You're up early." "I'd like to have dinner tonight," I said. Her smile flickered. Not melted, not dropped, just flickered. "Oh?" she asked, too light. "That sounds nice. It's been a while since we all sat together. Just us. No phone calls. No rushing." I watched the thought move behind her eyes, like a shadow passing behind curtains. Dinner meant conversation. Conversation meant unpredictability. And unpredictability was danger, but she couldn't refuse. Not without looking like the villain she didn't believe she was. "Of course," she said. "I'll make something special." Daniel came home early that day. He always looked tired now. Guilt ages faster than time. He stood in the doorway of my room, hands in his pockets. "Mom used to make roast on Sundays," he said. "Not nostalgia. Strategy. A memory used like currency." "Yes," I answered. "She did," he swallowed. "That memory wasn't his to use. It was mine." That evening, Claire set the table with the same care people give to scenes they hope history will remember differently. White plates, linen napkins, glasses filled before anyone sat. Daniel poured wine, for himself and for her. My glass sat untouched. We sat. No one spoke. Silence is a language. I've always been fluent. Claire broke first. "So," she said brightly, "tell us how you're feeling about being home." I pressed my fingertips lightly against the table's surface, grounding myself in texture. "In memory. It feels different," I said. "But familiar enough." Daniel forced a smile. Yeah, things change." "Yes," I said. "Things do." The clock on the wall ticked. The air conditioner hummed. Someone outside was mowing a lawn. Life, indifferent to revelation. I folded my hands. "I've been thinking," I said, "about everything that happened. About what it means to be cared for. About what it means to trust." Claire's fork paused mid-air. Daniel stared at his plate. I reached slowly into my pocket and placed a sealed envelope in the center of the table. There was no slam, no dramatic gesture. Just placement. Soft, precise, not final. Claire's voice was tight. "What is that?" "The truth," I said. No accusation. No theatrics. Just reality placed gently between us like an offering. Daniel's face went pale. Not the white of shock, but the gray of recognition. "You've been busy," he said quietly. "Yes," I answered. "No need to expand." Claire reached for the envelope. Didn't stop her. Her hands shook as she slid the papers free. Bank statements. Forged power of. Attorney.hospital transfer requests. Updated. Will a map of their intentions. Not spoken. Proven. Daniels. Jaw clenched so hard the muscle near his ear twitched. "Dad," he said, voice cracking. Anger or fear, I couldn't tell. "You don't understand?" "I understand perfectly," I said. "I remember everything." The words did not rise. They did not need to. Soft words land harder when spoken from clarity. Claire's breath stuttered. Her eyes darted, searching for a narrative, a defense, a story to make this one untrue. But paper does not lie. Paper holds still when voices don't. Daniel looked at me, not as a son looks at a father, but as a man looks at someone who has stopped participating in his illusion. "You think this fixes anything?" he whispered. "No," I said. "This exposes everything." Silence again. But this silence wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. The house felt different now. Not reclaimed, but awakened. Finally, I stood, steady, quiet, unshaking. "Dinner is over," I said gently. "The truth stays." I didn't look back as I walked away. There was nothing behind me I needed anymore. Not every truth needs to be shouted. Some truths are most devastating when spoken quietly. If you're watching this, tell me the last time you saw someone realize they were wrong. Not what happened, just how it felt. The envelope lay in the center of the dining table, its contents spread like fallen leaves. Documents, signatures, bank records, transfer requests. Proof does not argue. It simply exists. Claire stared at the papers as though they were written in a language she had never seen before. Her breathing trembled, shallow and uneven. Daniel's fists rested on the table, knuckles white, jaw hard, eyes unfocused. Not anger, panic. Panic is the moment control slips. They had believed I was forgetting. They had believed. The fall erased my memory. They had believed the hospital softened my mind. They had believed wrong. I sat back in my chair, hands relaxed, back straight. I did not raise my voice. I did not point. I did not accuse. Those who are guilty already know what they have done. "I want to understand," I said softly. "When did taking care of me become taking from me?" Claire swallowed hard. We were scared. We didn't know what would happen. You thought I wouldn't recover," I finished for her. Her eyes filled with tears. Not remorse. Fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of recoil. Fear of a narrative unraveling. Daniel leaned forward, voice strained. "Dad, listen!" "No," I said gently. "You listen." The silence that followed was full, heavy, present. "I fell," I continued. But I didn't slip. I remember the hand on my back. I remember the push. Daniel froze. Claire looked at him. The room exhaled. There was no screaming, no denial, just the quiet collapse of a lie. He tried to speak. I didn't mean, "You wanted my house," I said. "You wanted my accounts. You wanted control." His face crumpled, not into guilt, but into the realization that I no longer believed him. And once belief leaves a relationship, it never returns. That happened then. I reached for one specific document, the comparison sheet of my actual signature and the forged one used on the bank. Authorization. I placed it gently in front of him. "You already knew I would see this," I said. "You knew I would recognize my own hand." Daniel's eyes lowered. In that moment, he looked like the boy who once cried when he broke his mother's favorite vase. Not because the vase was precious, but because he couldn't undo what he'd done. Claire spoke next, voice small. "We were afraid. Afraid of being left out. Afraid of not having enough. Afraid of losing our future." I looked at her. Really looked. Not at the schemer. Not at the deceiver. Just at a person so terrified of scarcity, she tried to manufacture security by stealing it from someone she believed could no longer fight back. "Fear does not justify harm," I said. "Not to strangers." "And never to family." Her tears fell then. Not dramatic, not desperate. Just quiet. The kind of tears that come when the truth finally has nowhere left to go. Daniel pushed back his chair, stood, paced once, twice, then stopped behind his seat, gripping the wood as though it could hold him up. "What do you want from us?" he asked. And there it was. The real question, the one guilt always asks. Nothing, I said. I don't want anything from you. They both stared at me. That answer was worse than punishment. I didn't change the will to punish you, I continued. I changed it to protect what is still good. Emily, Claire closed her eyes. Daniel sat slowly, all the fight leaking out of him like air leaving a punctured tire. I'm not taking you to court, I said. Not pressing charges. Not seeking revenge. Daniel exhaled shakily, relief beginning to show. But, I added, calm, steady, final. Your involvement in my finances, property, and medical decisions ends tonight. Permanently. The relief evaporated. Claire's face broke completely. Daniel looked like a man standing inside the ruins of something he didn't realize he had burned. And I felt no triumph, just clarity. I'm not here to punish, I said. I'm here to end the story you thought you could write for me. The clock ticked. The house held still. No one moved. Dinner was cold now, but truth was warm, steady, alive. I stood, without hurry, without weakness. Good night, I said, and I left them sitting at the table, where their plan had died. Guilt has stages. It begins as defense, then it becomes justification, and, finally, when there is no one left to convince, it becomes pleading. If you're watching this, tell me if you believe people can regret what they never meant to do. Yes or no? The house was quiet after dinner. Too quiet? Not peaceful? Suspended, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I went to my study, not to work, not to think, but to sit, to be. The cassette recorder under the journals was still running, silent but present, capturing truth without interpretation. I didn't need it for leverage anymore. I needed it as remembrance, proof that I had been clear, steady, and whole when I chose the path forward. I had barely settled into my chair when I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy. Daniel. He stopped at the doorway. He didn't knock. He stood there like someone who had lost the language of apology, but still needed to speak. Dad, he said. I didn't respond. Sometimes silence is permission. Sometimes silence is invitation. And sometimes silence is the only way a person will speak honestly. He came inside, slowly, and sat across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together, like a child waiting to be scolded. When Mom died, he began, voice rough. I didn't know what to do with myself. You had your projects, your work, your routines. I didn't. I was just floating. This was not an apology. This was explanation, the stage before accountability. I tried to build something, he continued. A family, a life. Something impressive enough to feel like I was doing okay? His voice cracked, just once. But it wasn't enough, I said quietly, not as judgment, but as truth spoken plainly. He nodded. A slow, defeated movement. I thought if I had control of things here, I could finally feel stable, like I was someone, like I mattered. There it was. Not greed, not malice, just hunger. A hunger to feel worthy. And hunger, left untended, becomes harm. He raised his head then, eyes red, jaw trembling, defenses dissolving. I didn't mean to hurt you. I believed him. Intent and impact are not the same. A person can harm without intending to, but harm still matters. I leaned back, folding my hands in my lap, letting my voice stay soft. I know you didn't mean to, I said. But you did, he bowed his head, tears landing quietly on his hands. I don't want to lose you, he whispered, and something inside me, something deeper than pain or betrayal, ached, not for myself, for him, because I could see the boy he used to be, the one who asked me how long to hold a nail before hammering, the one who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long car rides, the one who wanted so badly to be good. He hadn't stopped wanting to be good. He had just been afraid he never was. "I'm not leaving," I said gently, "but the version of me you could control, that man is gone." He closed his eyes, as though bracing for impact. "I will always be your father," I continued, "but I will not be your foundation. You have to build your own." A long, quiet breath shuddered through him. Then, the small, deliberate, irreversible. I placed a single document on the table between us, voluntary withdrawal from financial authority and property claims. No lawyer language, no legal trap, just clarity. "This isn't punishment," I said. "This is freedom. For both of us." He stared at it for a long time. Then, slowly, with hands that trembled but did not hesitate, he picked up the pen. He signed. Not because he was defeated, because he understood. He stood when he finished, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "Is there any way back?" he asked. I looked at him, not as a father looks at a child, but as a man looks at another man who is finally standing on his own feet. "Yes," I said, "but not by returning, by beginning again." He nodded, one small, broken, hopeful nod, and left the room. The house exhaled, but our story was not finished, because Claire had not spoken yet, and she was not ready to lose. Some people break loudly, others break quietly. Claire broke like glass, silently, and in pieces too sharp to touch. If you're watching this, tell me whether you think people ever truly change. Just yes or no. No explanation. I remained in the debate study long after Daniel left. The house was still. That unnatural stillness that happens after truth has entered a room and refuses to leave. I heard Claire's footsteps before I saw her. Fast, precise, unsteady in the way of someone who has lost the script they were sure everyone else would follow. She stopped in the doorway, hands gripping the frame as though the house itself might shift beneath her. Her voice was thin. "He signed it, didn't he? Not what happened, not how did it go. Just, he signed it, straight to outcome." Her fear was transactional. "Yes," I said. She stepped inside, slowly, carefully, not out of respect, out of calculation. She was searching my face, searching for weakness, searching for something she could use. Instead, she found stillness. "That document," she whispered. "It ruins everything." "No," I said gently. "It corrects everything." She blinked hard, as if her eyes were refusing tears she could no longer control. "You don't understand what we were facing," she said. Her voice rose, not loud but strained. "We have bills, responsibilities, commitments. We've spent years building a life that looks secure. And it was fragile, Michael. So fragile you could have shattered it just by not waking up." I watched her. Not unkindly. "Why didn't you tell me you were struggling?" I asked. Her laugh was small and broken. "Because struggling is weakness, and weakness is how you lose." That was the truth, not the one she told the world, the one she told herself. She had spent her whole life believing that whoever held the most control was the safest. I leaned forward slightly. "And did control make you feel safe?" She didn't answer. Silence answered for her. She sat down, not gracefully, not deliberately, but as though gravity had pulled her into the chair. Her hands trembled as she pressed them flat against her knees. "I didn't push you," she said suddenly. I nodded. "I know." Her head snapped up, surprised. Fear had made her dangerous, but the fall was Daniel's. Her gaze shifted, slowly, painfully, to realization. You remember? Not a question, a reckoning. I remember everything, I said. She covered her mouth. Tears spilled. Not the dramatic kind that seeks sympathy. The exhausted kind that happen when there are no lies left to hold on to. I thought he would catch you, she whispered. He said he would. Steady you! He said he just needed you to be scared enough to sign some things. I didn't know he... Her voice broke completely. There are no villains in this chapter, just people who made terrible choices out of fear. I didn't come here to punish you, I said softly. She looked up, eyes swollen, searching for accusation, for judgment. She didn't find it. Then what do you want? She whispered. And here was the moment, the single point, where a story can become tragedy or closure. I reached for the second envelope, the one Andrew prepared just in case. A legal separation of financial ties. A clean boundary drawn between our lives. You get to keep your marriage, I said, however you choose to rebuild it. But you no longer have access to my accounts, my decisions, or my home. Her face crumpled, not from losing money, but from losing the illusion that control was love. I can't go back to the life we had, she said. I know, I replied, but you can go forward, if you choose to. She wiped her face with the back of her sleeve, the gesture of a child lost in a grown woman's body. I don't know how, she whispered. You learn, I said, the same way I am, one day at a time. She stared at the envelope for a long time. Then, with hands still trembling, she signed. No defiance, no justification, just surrender. Not to me, but to truth. She stood, slowly. Emily still loves you, I said gently. That was the thread that didn't break. Claire closed her eyes and nodded. Then she left the room. Not angrily, not dramatically, just gone. The house felt lighter, not healed, not restored, but breathing again. The kind of exhale that happens after a storm breaks. And in that quiet, I knew what came next was not confrontation, not repair, closure, the kind that sits beside love, not instead of it. Endings are not always loud. Sometimes they arrive like dusk, slowly, softly, without needing to be announced. If you're watching this, tell me one person you wish you could speak to right now, just their first name. The house was quiet the next morning, not tense, not heavy, just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows something long overdue finally being spoken. Daniel and Claire stayed in their room. I heard no arguing, no footsteps, no frantic whispers, just silence. The silence of two people sitting in the debris of the life they thought they could construct on top of another person's. I didn't go to them. There was nothing more to say. Instead, I went outside. The garden had overgrown in my absence. Vines climbing the fence, weeds rising between the stepping stones, the elm in the corner stretching its branches wider than I remembered. But the bench, the old wooden one beneath that elm, still sat in its place. Emily used to sit beside me there, her feet not quite touching the ground, and as if memory had summoned her, the back door opened and she stepped outside, hugging her stuffed rabbit against her chest, the same one I had repaired when she was small. She didn't speak. She didn't hesitate. Not justice. She walked straight to me and climbed onto the bench, legs swinging, shoulder resting lightly against mine. For a long while, we simply sat listening to birds. Wind leaves, Children are born fluent in silence. Adults spend their whole lives forgetting the language. I heard Mom crying. She said softly. I nodded. People cry when something inside them changes. She thought about that. Slowly. Carefully. The way she always had. Will things be bad now? She asked. No, I said. Just different. She leaned her head on my arm, small and warm, a simple weight that grounded the world back into something real. I don't understand everything, she whispered. You don't have to, I answered. Understanding comes slowly. Like growing, you just have to stay kind while you learn. Her fingers tightened around the rabbit's ear, twisting it gently. Are you still my grandpa? She asked. I felt something in my chest soften. Something deeper than hurt. Deeper than memory. That will never change, I said. Not even when I'm gone someday. Not even then, she nodded, accepting this not with grief, but with the quiet certainty of someone who has not yet learned to fear time. She reached into her pocket and unfolded a drawing. A new one. This one showed the two of us on the bench, the tree behind us, the sky colored in with bold strokes of blue. The heart was still there, but this time she wrote inside it, Remember us, not remember me. Us, memory shared, memory held, memory as a place you can return to. I tucked the drawing gently into my jacket pocket. Not hidden, but close. That was the one that mattered more than all the signatures and legal forms. Child's drawing, a map back to love. We sat there until the sun shifted and shadows stretched across the yard. Eventually, she stood. I'm going to get my coloring pencils, she said. Can we make more pictures later? Yes, I said. We can. She smiled and ran back inside, feet light, hopeful, alive. I remained on the bench a while longer. The air smelled of grass and earth. A small breeze tugged at my jacket. The house behind me was still. Not the stillness of death, but of reset. There would be healing, slow, imperfect, uneven. Daniel would have to learn how to live without control. Claire would have to learn how to live without fear. And I would have to learn something too, how to let go of what almost destroyed me. Without letting go of love, I stood slowly, steady on my feet. The world did not need to know what had happened here. There would be no courtroom, no public reckoning, no dramatic ending. Just lives continuing, separately but connected, changed but not ruined. As I walked back toward the house, I thought they believed I would forget everything. But I remembered who I was, who they were, what love is, and what it is not. What must be protected, what must be released. I didn't remember to win. I remembered to live. And that was enough.